Hello, bruvs. Back in bed with a book. Francis Stroh, Beer Money, a memoir of privilege and loss. Let me try to sit up a little better. She was a member of the Stroh's family, a defunct beer company which has been brought back, but she was part of the heyday. Well, I guess not the heyday, the waning days of the heyday. Anyways, let's see what it's about. I was going to drink a 1960s Stroh's to go along with this, since I have I think half a case from that era that I got at an estate sale. But let's see. A memoir of privilege and loss. Absorbing. New York Times. Frances Stroh was born in Detroit and raised in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. She received her BA from Duke University and her MA from the Chelsea College of Arts in London as a Fulbright scholar. She practiced as an installation artist. What the hell's an installation artist? Before turning to writing, she lives in San Francisco. What a shocking. I'm not going to even read the back part. Beer Money. A memoir of privilege and loss. This book, what year was it? 2016. This book is my love letter to a past I could reconcile only through the strange alchemy of writing and rewriting its pages over the course of 4 years. My family's story has been documented elsewhere in less nuanced ways, and I make no claim that my version is the definitive one. Though I believe it to be the more felt one, there is no final truth, only one's own. The story on these pages is my story, the one that only I could write. And since the mind naturally conflates events that seem connected, I allowed 3 scenes to remain as composites, because that is how they initially came to me. The events of 2 family Christmas celebrations are blended into one. 2 trips to the Krishna Center in Detroit are also merged, and 2 gatherings of Taft friends in the apartment on Riverside Drive in 1983 and 84 have morphed into a single event. These are no composite characters, though some names have been changed. I reconstructed scenes with dialogue, facts, and details as closely to the actual events as possible. So basically bullshit. Relying on research journals, old video interviews, as well as recent interviews with several family members. Oh, shit. Yeah. And of course, I call them my own memory. Throughout these pages, I have been deeply committed to the emotional truth of the story, reconstructing dialogue as I remember it, but also allowing the characters to be themselves and to say the sort of things they would have said. Right. So basically, this is a total fucking fiction. Many people and events have been omitted, allowing the part to stand in for the whole and permitting the story to unwind according to its own logic as it shaped me. For Mishka. At least it's not for Mitski. If it was for Mitski, I'd close the book and throw it right into a fire. How did you go bankrupt? Bill asked. 2 ways, Mike said. Gradually and then suddenly. Ernest Hemingway. The sun also rises. Beer Money. The Eric Stroh Family, 1971. Oh, shit. Prologue. I stood in the center of a white room, darkened and soundproofed, with 6 videos playing on screens surrounding me, each one featuring an enormous talking mouth. I was trying to see the installation as others saw it. Visitors to the exhibition took in the cacophony of voices, a family of 6 telling the family story from disparate points of view. As I stepped closer to each screen, I could single out its distinctive voice. There were years and years during which our family lived in denial of who and what we really were, said one young man. I'm sure there are families with problems similar to our own, offered another, somewhere out there. My life has not unfolded as I thought it would, the mother said. I lived in a dream when I was young. Happiness is not something you turn on and off like running water. The father smiled and puffed on his pipe. Life doesn't work that way. Over and over again, I had listened to these pronouncements in a cramped, dark editing room. I was 26 years old. Installation. What is a 26-year-old installation artist whose work had been selected for this group exhibition at San Francisco Camera Work Gallery? The family scene, the ruined family projected on the screens, was my own. Anybody know what an installation artist is? The people around me gazed at the talking mouse as if hypnotized, unaware that one member of this family stood in their midst. No one knew they were watching me reflect on my own father's alcoholism or my brother's drug addiction. So let's say, nice, bro, for real. Keep it up. Thanks, buddy. No one knew they were watching me reflect on my own father's alcoholism or my brother's drug addiction, nor could they know we were part of the multi-generational corporate legacy whose products were all American household names. But then we'd all been groomed since birth to never discuss this, least of all in front of a camera. When my brother Charlie said, "Let's hope the family business picks up so I could take early retirement along with everyone else," viewers might have assumed he was a hard-working employee at, say, a faltering hardware store, not a brewery heir turned convicted drug dealer. When my own mouth on the screen spoke, I always felt I was somehow special because I was my father's favorite. I alone knew that my father had abandoned his dream to be a career photographer in order to join the family business, then rejoiced when I myself took up photography. I also knew this video piece could not have been what he had in mind when he gave me my first Nikon, or is it Nikon at age 16. It was revenue from Stroh's beer, Old Milwaukee, Schlitz, and Schaefer that paid for things like that fancy camera. My family had been brewing beer in Detroit since long before the invention of the assembly line. Beer money. She was a heir to the Stroh Brewing Company from Detroit. The invention of this assembly line and the Model T, we'd survived Prohibition by selling ice cream and malt syrup for home brewing, and then entered the you could home brew during Prohibition? And then entered the mid-20th century with the beer brand emblematic of the American dream itself, Stroh's. Our products came to symbolize at once the American working class, and by way of college kids who drank Schlitz at Nantucket beach parties and served Strohs on draft at their campus fraternities, the carefree youth of the 70s and the 80s. By the mid-1980s, taglines like Stroh's is spoken here and Old Milwaukee's "It doesn't get any better than this" were as recognizable as Budweiser's The King of Beers. But within a handful of years, a century-and-a-half old brewing tradition would be verging on extinction, Stroh's beer vanishing from the national landscape. Our family business blazed the trail of economic decline in America. By the late 80s, our beer sales were faltering, even as our personal tragedies had begun to mount. My brother Charlie's drug conviction, my parents' divorce. By 1993, the time was ripe for my video piece. My immediate family members all agreed to the interviews. The floodgates opened, and the story of a real American family flowed forth. It had filled with people now, the small installation room. They stood in tight clusters. The ambient light of the screens flickering off their faces. The scent of gallery red wine floated in the air. No one seemed to notice my absorption in the content of the interviews. I stepped closer to Charlie's screen. As a kid, I used to lie to Dad, and he used to whip me. But the only reason I lied to him was because I was intimidated by him. By him. I moved toward my brother Bobby's screen. My father is a very talented, very artistic person, and I think it's a shame he hasn't done more with himself. He frowned through his mustache. He had a mustache? Well, there you go. When he's dead and gone, I wish there would be more he could leave behind, like gallery shows or what have you. I walked over to my brother Whitney's screen. Dad is an overbearing, controlling son of a bitch. I've tried to get along with him, but he's always a prick to me, so fuck him. The crowd bristled with tension. It's so cathartic, one viewer said to her companion in a hushed voice. If you like your catharsis with the side of explosives, he whispered back. We'd each said things to the camera that we wouldn't want the others to overhear. Now our voices rang out in a nexus of crossed indictment. To anyone else, the effect might have been cathartic and explosive, but not to me. After all, I had lived it, and our downward spiral, unfortunately, had a long way to go yet. Many years would pass before I would come to see that the Stroh's brewery story, my family story, and the story of the once great city of Detroit were all intertwined. Our destinies and histories so enmeshed that in their final days, the brewery, the family, and Detroit all rumbled together. A long eroded cliff falling whole into the inland sea. The collections. There she is, Frances Stroh, 1978, by Eric Stroh. New York City, 1973. The shopkeepers of my youth were eager men and women who would turn up the lights and smile extravagantly when my father and I walked through the doors. Hello, Mr. Stroh, echoed through the dusty chambers of Madison Avenue antique stores. Broadway camera dealers, the elite pipe shop of London. My father always addressed the shop owners by their first names, as if they were old friends, while they led us toward elegantly appointed back rooms. Armored doors opened into velvety interiors with the most prized discoveries of the season. A pair of 19th century celestial and terrestrial globes, an engraved gold and silver plating antique firearm set. My father handled the items with confidence and familiarity. A cigarette hanging off the corner of his lip, the muted excitement in the room making my breath uneven. I remember one of our trips to Madison Avenue when I was 6. My father and I stood in the back of the shop, inspecting a pair of ivory inlaid revolvers. The dust in the room spun around in a beam of light from the window. The shop owner broke the silence with chatter, perhaps trying to ease any guilt he imagined my father might feel at spending such excessive sums. My father interrupted him. Are the holsters original? I bought fakes in Chicago once. Please shout out Hugh Oh, you want huge anus? Is that what you're trying to get out? Don't be dumb all your life. My father interrupted him. Are the holsters original? I bought fakes in Chicago once. Huge anus. Are you here? Those are double loop Western holsters, Mr. Stroh. By A.M. Nash, 100% antique. What was the rest of it? He has stage 3 breast cancer. He does? Huge anus. Those are double loop Western holsters, Mr. Stroh, by A.M. Nash. 100% antique. My father ran his thumb over the embossed leather, scratching the finish with his thumbnail. Patina's good, he said. The shop owner nodded. You won't find a better set. His few strands of hair. What's up? His few strands of hair combed over an expanse of receding hairline. He had been carefully gelled into place. He walked over to a dusty shelf of books and pulled out a volume. Oh, and I meant to call you about this Dickens series, Mr. Stroh's. What did the ocean say to the river? Nothing, they just waved. He opened the gold-embossed, leather-bound book. It's a first edition collection of the totality of Dickens' novels, circa 1880, 29 in all. My father put the holsters down on a table and took up the volume. A Christmas Carol, he said, smiling over at me. I leaned against the silk-upholstered divan, and dug my hands deeper into the pockets of my Sunday overcoat, a vague feeling of dread constricting my throat. We had watched A Christmas Carol 3 Christmases in a row in the library, our tree sparkling in the corner of the living room. Glasses of eggnog sitting on coasters next to us. I watched the movie only to please my father. The truth was, I always had terrible nightmares afterward, my sleep haunted by the three ghosts. As he looked through the volumes, my father's face succumbed to that expression I'd seen so often on these shopping trips, the sort of glow I'd seen on worshippers' faces at Christ Church as they sang from the hymn books. And I knew my father would buy the Dickens set no matter the cost, putting him in a good mood for at least a few hours, or, if I was lucky, the entire day. Afterward, my father and I walked over to Park Avenue in the brisk April wind to have lunch at the Regency Hotel, my father's English leather shoes grinding the pavement as I struggled to keep up with him. He took my hand and led me across the street against a throng of rushing people. My father pointed up at one of the tall buildings. That one there, he told me. It's the most expensive apartment building in the world. The limestone building rose up toward the sky, as if primed to launch with perhaps 1,000 windows. Power surged from its interior, as if the game of the world, a monstrous game of Monopoly, always underway, was being played day and night by its inhabitants. The air around us seemed to crackle with excitement, and I felt at once proud that my father knew such things, and disappointed to be only passing by. I wish we could go inside the building's walls of polished stone, ride the elevator to the top floor as we had at the Empire State Building, and look out on the world. Maybe you'll even live there someday, said my father's, sensing my fascination. I felt thrilled and doubtful. Though my father constantly bought expensive things, my mother often worried that we couldn't afford them. Really, I asked tentatively, I could live there? Sure, my father smiled. You can do anything you want. All it takes is money. I could feel the solid warmth of my father's hands as he led me along the sidewalk to lunch. His happy mood seemed to promise me the world. We walked through the marble-floored lobby of the Regency Hotel into the dining room and were seated and given menus. Plates traveled past us to other tables in the hands of black-tied waiters. My stomach knotted with hunger. The menu looked like the one at our country club: lamb chops, filet mignon, whitefish. My father glanced around for the waiter. "I'll have a hamburger, extra well done, please," he said when the waiter arrived. The waiter raised an eyebrow. "That's right. Cook it like a hockey puck." My father turned to me. "My daughter would like a hot dog, french fries, and a Coke." With the exception of the Coca-Cola, the items he ordered were not on the menu. The waiter came by with a tray of rolls and placed one on each of our plates with a set of silver tongs. Perfect balls of butter sat atop crushed ice in a silver bowl. "How about we swing by Schwartz after lunch?" my father asked me. He took a roll and slathered it with butter. "Then we'll have tea at the plaza." His light blue eyes fixed on mine, and I felt a rush of excitement. He'd remembered. We'd been to FAO Schwarz, my favorite destination, a few times before, but just down from the Plaza Hotel. The toy store windows sparkled with elaborate displays, beckoning to every child passing by. One year, an entire kingdom of Madame Alexander dolls inhabited castles and locked towers, fought dragons, and secured or rescued princesses. "Okay," I said shyly, not wanting to show my father how much I'd hoped he would suggest it. My father took a second roll, this time from my plate, and smiled at me. Whenever he was happy, I felt I was at the center of a benevolent universe. Having thrived in Detroit for 5 generations, my father's clan was infamous for spending money nearly as quick as they made it. My father's generation in particular, my great-grandfather Bernard Stroh, my great-great-grandfather Bernard Stroh, had come over from Kern, Germany in 1848 with a family recipe. In 1850, he established the Lion Brewing Company in Detroit because the local water tasted so good. Bernard made a bohemian-style brew in his basement and sold the barrels door to door out of a wheelbarrow, saving every spare penny to buy a horse-drawn carriage. Later, thanks in no small part to Henry Ford and his Model T trucks, Bernard's sons, Julius and Bernard Jr., expanded the company's distribution throughout the entire Midwest, renaming it the Stroh Brewing Company. By the 1970s, the third and fourth generation of Strohs were running the family-owned brewery. "Hey, buddy, have no clue what you're reading, and what you're doing is incredibly unique. Good work on being created. God bless, brother. Thanks. Thanks, bruv." They made a regional beer brand, Stroh's Beer, that went national in the early 1980s. After the purchase of the Schlitz, oh man, my hand. Schlitz and Schaefer breweries, Jesus Christ, a consolidation of the industry, they landed 30 beer brands in our portfolio, making the family company the third largest beer maker in the United States, behind only Anheuser-Busch and Miller. The majority of Stroh's brands targeted inner-city subcultures, the blue-collar segment, and because the beer was cheap, college kids. At its peak, the Stroh Brewing Company launched an enormous commercial and residential real estate project in downtown Detroit, built its own biotechnology research center in Durham, North Carolina, and underwrote a private plane for its CEO, named in the Forbes 400 list from 1984 to 1992. The Stroh's family possessed the largest private beer fortune in America. What's up, bruv? For decades, the money was flowing, and the Strohs lived like kings. My father's notorious collecting landed him on every dealer's A-list, making him the poster boy for the Stroh's spending habits. He loved the attention, the grandiosity, and the elusive hit of immortality he felt when he walked into a shop. It seemed inexhaustible, the pipeline of beautiful objects and the money to buy them, and we never grew tired of wandering the shop's dusty back rooms. But as my father's health declined in the decades to come, through the various stages of heart disease, and my life and work took me elsewhere, our shopping trips gave way to brief visits in this or that city, to catch up calls with tenuous overseas connections, and the team we'd formed in my youth slowly dissolved. Beer Money by Frances Stroh. She was a great great granddaughter of a beer empire owner. But as my father died alone in the hospital in 2009, I was stunned he hadn't wanted me at his side. He hated to show vulnerability, of course. Still, it hurt that he'd been so stubborn all the way to the end. In my sorrow, I realized that the small girl who so loved and admired him had never really left. It was the same small girl who despairingly called his answering machine in Michigan for months until the house was sold, just to hear his voice on the outgoing message, incredulous that he was no longer there. When the time came for me, as the executor of the estate, to put my father's collections up for sale, a crippling fatigue settled in. No, I don't read books every day. I yearned to wait in my grief for as long as my spirit needed to, not haggle over consignment agreements and auction contracts. My father had left me the whole of his collections, a nod to the years we'd spent together buying them, and perhaps to some sort of apology. Great, how are you, bruv? The gesture, though, was like a loaded pistol. The Stroh Brewing Company had been sold 10 years before, in 1999, and my father had spent the bulk of his share of the proceeds. The collections and the Grosse Pointe house in which they sat were all that remained of my father's legacy, and disinheriting my brothers seemed nothing less than cruel. It felt as if the collections and the money they represented had formed an invisible web in which I'd been caught all my life, and I found myself secretly wishing I could give everything to charity with a single phone call. But as I'd decided to split my father's possessions with my brothers, or at least their value, assessing, dividing, and selling off the collections was what I had to do. The freedom I'd coveted came only gradually, a thing, as things of real value often do. You sleep. You sleeping. Yeah, I'm fucking sleeping. I'm sleep reading. Nope, that's the end of that thing. There's the Stroh's Brewery Company. Yeah, I'm sleeping. I like to sleep read. That's when I get all my reading done, is when I'm sleeping. Detroit, 1973. Lock your doors, kids, my father said as we crossed into Detroit on Jefferson Avenue, leaving behind the wide green lawns and lakefront mansions of Grosse Pointe. Dropping their Mad magazines on the back seat, Bobby and Charlie sat up at attention. I hugged my Barbie to my chest. We had entered the fear zone. Miles and miles of derelict buildings stretched before us. 4-story power brick buildings with boarded up windows, peeling advertisements, and torn awnings Many of the structures looked as if they once had been rather grand houses or apartment buildings. See you, bruvs. Their graceful stone steps rising up to paneled, arched wooden doors. I imagine women in wide feathered hats coming out of those doors. Good night. Their uniformed drivers waiting outside in horse drawn carriages. Now the building's brick walls were collapsing. We pushed down the plastic knobs. Oh, I gotta sit up. That's very uncomfortable. This is very uncomfortable, bruv. I must reposition myself. Oh, shit. That really isn't much better. We pushed down the plastic knobs at the tops of our doors, listening for the reassuring clicks of safety, and sat silently for the remainder of the drive to the brewery, as if being quiet might attract less attention to our father's silver Chrysler. We're only as safe as the locks on our doors, my father always said. We knew why, because all the people on the street were black. Men and women walked into liquor stores that had the word lotto spray painted on their awnings, cradling brown paper bags when they came out. Cadillacs crawled alongside streets where the houses had been burned in the riots and left in to disintegrate. Women wore short skirts in November, their legs muscular and lean above high heels. Men circled in the middle of the road, back and forth, angry, wild eyed, shouting at each other. It wasn't, I wasn't as afraid as my father. Sometimes when my parents traveled with their friends to Bermuda or the Bahamas, I stayed in a black neighborhood in Detroit with our housekeeper, Ollie. I climbed trees with Tony and Dana, Ollie's grandchildren, and sang gospel at her church. I ate Ollie's southern cooking and watched her husband, Raymond, blow cigarette smoke out of his tracheotomy hole. Raymond was dying of lung cancer. I could hear Ollie crying at night through the paper thin wall, and Raymond comforting her by humming old songs. And I wondered why, when it was perfectly safe to stay at Ollie's, we had to lock our doors to keep the black people on the street out. Damn riots, my father said, changed everything. We could hear the gunshots and smell the smoke all the way up to Grosse Pointe. They had come the year after I was born, the riots. Lost the phone. This is great. Great videography. In 1967, my father said the blacks had changed after that, but of course he wasn't talking about Ollie. Is the light still on? Yeah, it's on. The whites fled Detroit for the suburbs, and the Grosse Pointe police force doubled in size. Any non-resident black found within the city limits will be escorted back to Detroit. I'd once heard a police officer say to a woman who complained about black kids swimming at the farm's pier pool. She'd been dressed in a monogrammed pink and green sweater, and her husband's khakis were cuffed at the ankle, like my father's. They look like everyone else in Grosse Pointe, the kind of people who drink cocktails from glasses etched with the motto, "You can't be too rich or too thin," and whose black cooks and maids were treated entirely different from the blacks on the streets or at the parks. Whites aren't safe down here anymore, my father said, switching lanes to avoid hitting a man who carried a broom box on his shoulder. Coleman Young's made sure enough of that. Coleman Young was the mayor of Detroit. My uncles, who ran the family company, were always having meetings with Mr. Young, making deals with him. Uncle Peter and great uncle John ran the brewery. Uncle, what's that say? Gary? The ice cream division. As children, we understood Coleman Young to be the king of Detroit. Someone our family had to please at all costs because we were white. I could see the Stroh's beer sign just ahead, hovering above the brewery in red block letters that lit up the sky. It always startled me seeing our name like that, and I looked away as we turned into the parking lot, focusing instead on the rows and rows of blood red beer trucks, Stroh's beer inscribed in gold across their sides. My father swung open the door to the brew house, allowing Bobby and Charlie through. My father smiled down at me as I passed through in my red winter coat and one of my mittens trailing on the floor from the string connecting them through my sleeves. All through the cavernous space was the pungent scent of hops and wheat. Enormous copper cauldrons of brew, one after another, emitted their noxious steam as we walked the catwalk running along the perimeter of the space. We looked down at the blue uniformed men adding ingredients to the brew through sliding hatches on the sides of the cauldrons, their rosy copper gleaming under the fluorescent lighting. Can you smell the beer, my father? That beer, my father shouted over the din of machinery. It's cooked with real fire. He pointed to a row of 6 copper cauldrons that had been tiled around their sides like bathtubs. That's fire. The fire's inside. I was just learning to read. I remembered seeing the words fire brewed on, god damn, on a beer bottle in our refrigerator. Only fire brewed beer in the U.S., my father told us as he stamped out his cigarette on the catwalk. We do it the old fashioned way. How many more pages do I gotta go? A lot. My father worked in the marketing department. Sometimes he flew to Hollywood to oversee the production of Stroh's beer commercials. Later, he'd show me the ads on TV while we sat eating pizza in the library at home. My favorite was an ad in which a pretzel climbed up a bottle of beer to take a sip. My father led us around the perimeter of the brew house. I am disturbing you, brother. My father led us around the perimeter of the brew house. He tapped his cigarette pack on his open palm to knock one out. He wore a dark gray pinstripe suit with a white shirt and a burgundy tie, dotted with tiny tennis rackets. He had on businessman's shoes, lace up black barges with pointy toes, and tiny eyelets in the hard leather shoes that weighed as much as a small dog when I picked them up in his closet, especially with the shoe horns still in them. Dad, wear these, I would say as he dressed for work, holding up the leaden shoes. He had at least 10 pairs to choose from. He always walked over in his black socks held up by suspenders just below his knees and took the shoes. Thanks, minuscule. What the hell does that mean? My father leaned into the tailing of the catwalk. He looked at Bobby and Charlie as he drew thoughtfully on his cigarette. You two will work here someday. This is your company. I know, Dad, said Charlie, as if he'd heard my father say this many times. Bobby and Charlie studied the men who loaded the hops into the vats. Bobby brushed his auburn curls out of his eyes. At 12 and 14, my brothers were big boys and, with their tweed jackets and corduroys, seemed nearly ready to don their own business suits. Fair skinned and freckled like my mother, Bobby went to a boarding school in Connecticut called Kent, the same name as my father's cigarette brand. Charlie, too, would soon go away to school. He shared my father's coloring: straight blonde hair, blue eyes, rosy skin. Beer Money by Frances Stroh, a memoir of privilege and loss. Her family obviously owned a beer company. Rosy skin. None of which stopped my father from favoring Bobby, his firstborn. That's awful blurry, isn't it? Oh shit, why is it blurry? Dad, can I have that job? Charlie asked excitedly, pointing down at a man who took the temperature of a glass of golden liquid. Sure, Chaz, said my father. Maybe some summer when you're in college. Where would I work at the company? I wondered. I'd seen only one woman since we had arrived at the reception desk. What about me, Dad? My father smiled his Hollywood smile. You're going to be a movie star, right? It says movie stat, right? But it's supposed to be star, I believe. Or does it say star? Yeah, it does say star. Oh. Right, Franny? This was one of our inside jokes. My father adored old movies. Anything with Humphrey Bogart. Fred Astaire, Bing Crosby, and their beautiful leading ladies, Lauren Bacall, Ingrid Bergman, Audrey Hepburn. We crossed into the bottle shop where an endless procession of dark brown bottles were filled with beer, labeled and sorted as they traveled through a mechanical assembly line, a miniature of the one I'd seen at the Ford plant on a school field trip. I watched, fascinated, as the bottles marched along like ants toward some mysterious place where they would be loaded into cases and trucked away. Thanks, bruv. My father built this packaging facility just before he died in the late 40s, my father said with pride. Should have put in a can plant too, of course. That had to be added later. Gotta readjust myself here. These were some of the only facts he'd ever shared about my grandfather, who died of lung cancer in 1950 when my father was 17. Sometimes I've wondered if my father had even really known him. Bobby, freckles glistened in the rising heat. He pulled at his shirt collar. I want to sell beer, Dad, he said, turning to our father. Can I? Sure, why not? My father turned and walked us around the length of the bottle shop. I tripped in my winter boots, and Charlie took my hand. Bobby removed his jacket and swung it over his shoulder. He wore a brass Stroh's belt buckle. My father unlocked the door that opened onto a long corridor lined with portraits of our beer-making ancestors and their wives, Bernard, Eleonora, Julius, Hetty. Some of the portraits had been painted by Gary Melchers, a well-regarded American impressionist who also happened to be my great-great-uncle. My father stopped in front of a painting of Julius Stroh, his grandfather, who gazed quizzically at us through a monocle, severe and determined in his mourning coat and cravat. My father smiled up at the portrait. I used to sit on Julius's lap, and he would always say, Have you been a good boy today, Eric? And I knew I had to lie. Yes, grandpuppy, I have. My father laughed. The old kraut could be awfully punitive. So could my father, for that matter. He flicked open a gold Dunhill lighter, one I recognized from our trip to London the previous summer, and lit his cigarette. He bought the lighter the same day he took me to the Tower of London. I remembered him pointing out the medieval torture devices used on the king's disobedient subjects. The chopping block still had the axe marks where real heads had been severed. Afterward, he'd gone to Harrods, where my father had bought me a pile of new summer dresses, but by the time the dresses arrived home, I had already outgrown them. What a terrible waste of money, my mother complained. Eric, how could you be so reckless? This is why I never buy children's clothes new. My father stood in the dining room, emptied the shipping box, and looked through the dresses, a defeated expression on his face. He had been so excited to see me in them. I'd worn only one blue chiffon dress on the night we'd gone to see Alice in Wonderland at the theater. We all regarded the painting of Julius hanging menacingly over our heads in its heavy gilt frame. Would Julius have spanked us? Asked Charlie. Would he have spanked you? You kids don't know how good you have it, my father said wistfully. Next, he led us down the corridor to a heavy wooden door that opened to the Rath Skillet, a light-filled welcome room for brewery tour guests, arranged with red and white checkered tables and decorated with Stroh's memorabilia. Antique beer trays with the old Stroh's logo, hurricane lamps, air balloons, and giant, brightly painted toy beer trucks, all with Stroh's beer decaled in gold. I wanted to touch everything, run the trucks across the floor like my brothers used to do at home, but most of it sat on high shelves well out of reach. We were the only guests. Everyone who worked in the Rathskeller greeted my father. The bartender, a bald man wearing an apron and leaning against the wooden bar, seemed especially friendly to my father, like all the bartenders at the clubs my father frequented. Well, hello, Eric. Hello there, John. You've got your brood along with you today. Most of them, anyway. Whitney, the baby, had stayed home. A good-looking lot they are, said John. Let's have a drink, kid. Please tell me this guy gave these kids beer. Let's have a drink, kid, said my father, heading for the bar. Bobby, Charlie, and I settled at a table and waited quietly. A waitress brought us cheese, crackers, and 3 Cokes. No one said any more to us, and I began to feel as if the staff in the Rathskeller were waiting for us to leave. They were expecting a tour group any moment. I heard John tell my father. My father came out over carrying a pile of T-shirts that said Stroh a party across the front, and we put them on over our clothes. We sat saying nothing in the 2 big T-shirts while my father had another drink. And then from the factory floor came the hiss and roar of the flames firing up underneath the copper cauldrons. Charlie broke into a wide, buck-toothed smile. Cheers, Penny, he said, tapping my glass with his. He tossed the Coke back in 3 quick gulps, a perfect imitation of my father. He did not give the kids a drink. I'm gooning to your voice. What the hell is gooning? I'm gooning to your voice. You should slap yourself for even saying that. See how long the next chapter is. The house at Grayton Road, 1974. Honestly, that isn't all that impressive for a mansion. This chapter looks long. Very long. How many pages in on my... Does it even say page numbers? 30. It's not bad. All right, we stop. We stopping. What do you rate the book? I give it about a fucking 3.5 so far. Oh, all right. You like the book? Well, you'll have to come back for more later. I'm not reading all day. I gotta go to work. I'm gonna read every one of these books today. What's she doing? Oh, she's smoking a cigarette. I thought she was vaping. What are your final thoughts? Not gonna enjoy work. Next time when I read this, I'm gonna pull out an old 1960s beer. What is wrong with these women who vape continuously? Literally nonstop. It's ignorant. What do I do for work? I'm the painter of the Sistine Chapel. Southern writers in the New South movement. Time and literature. I wonder if there's a robot that will just read. What's it like to paint the Sistine Chapel every day? Pretty boring. That sounds great. Time and literature. Let's pull it down. Really need to move. Oh, look how dusty that fucker is. Really need to move this bed to the basement again. It's getting that time of year. Edward Saylor. Or Sales. Time and Literature by Hans Meyerhoff. Meyerhoff. University of California Press, 1955. This book smells awful. This book smells very musty. I'm going to have to go put it on the porch. This study attempts to say something about certain significant aspects of time, which seem... Yeah, this book's got to go to the porch. This smells awful. Which seem to play a considerable part in literature and which seem to be excluded from the analysis of the concept of time in science. No, this one smells musty. It must go to my porch. I mean, it's getting pretty bad. It needs to be sent to the porch so it can be sunned to... What are the topics here? Subjective relativity of time and the river, order and association of time and the self, eternity, discretion and death. Why do you read on lives? What the hell does that mean? Are you saying read online? Because I'm a champ. Are you saying read online or read on lives? The same reason why you're listening to me read online. Because I can. What did the cover say? What did the ocean say to the river? Nothing, they just waved. Didn't someone just say that joke like 15 minutes ago? On live, as in you're live on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram. This is YouTube, isn't it? Pretty sure this is YouTube and not Instagram. Yeah, there you go, buddy. This book I want to read too. The fantastic in literature. Symbolism and American literature. Look at the whale. It's Moby Dick, obviously. Satire. Critical essays on Roman literature. No. I just want the stuff read to me. The anatomy of satire. Reading's kind of boring, actually. Memory and literature from Rousseau to neuroscience. Wonder what happens when I turn that off. Oh, very dark is what happens. Wonderlands. Essays on the Life of Literature. Charles Baxter. Trouble in Mind. The Short Story and Conflict. Are you scared? Are you scared, bruv? Literary daughters. Southern Writers and the New South Movement, 1865 to 1913. This book I've actually read on the channel. I believe I finished it, yeah. Trousered Apes, Sick Literature in a Sick Society. The collected stories of Amy Hempel. And I only put her there because, which book is it? It's one of these books. Might even be this one. Microfiction. She has a story in it, and one of her stories mentions, it's not even a story, Love the Collection. What, the book collection? Or just the fiction collection? Let's see if I can find her short story. They're very short. It's like 10 words. Maybe it's not in here. There it is. Oh, and I fucking closed it. Hostess. She swallowed Gore Vidal. Then she swallowed Donald Trump. She took a blue capsule and a gold spancel, a B complex and an E, and put them on the tablecloth a few inches apart. She pointed the one at the other. Martha Stewart, she said, meet Oprah Winfrey. She swallowed them both without water. Amy Hempel, housewife. She would always sleep with her husband and with another man in the course of the same day, and then the rest of the day, for whatever was left to her of that day, she would exploit by incanting. French film. That's the reason why I have her collected books, because she mentions Donald Trump in it, so she's probably... I wonder if anyone's ever asked her about that little... I should probably contact her and ask her. Do you regret mentioning Donald Trump? She's probably aghast by it. Flash fiction. How to touch a bleeding dog. Flash fiction's actually pretty good. They're basically like stories that are like 2 pages long. The world's shortest stories. And Autumn Sonata. An October night, rams on the tube, cold cuts and beer for the guests, who banter about football and food. 3 hours ago, we buried my cousin, 23, needle-tracked arms and all. Had Marys all around, Now the roar of the crowd drowns the gathering. The autumn moon will soon go down. There's also another author, which is behind me, I assume, who wrote books and books upon books of sudden fiction. Maybe not books upon books. Let me see if I can find Richard Castellanos in this morass. He should be right there. There he is. Minimal Fictions. See? I told you. Except he did them all fucked up. Flashback, Sweat, Heresy, Wonder, Menacing. It's like E. Cummings on crack. Goodbye, Money. Fist, Thrust Forward, Discussions, Pipeline. How the fuck did they type this on a page? Look at that. Very creative, bruv. Let's put him back up there. He also wrote a biography of E. Cummings. Or maybe he just edited it. That's edited by Castellanos. And I used to publish a magazine. I won't tell you the name of it. But he sent Minimal Fictions to me. As you can see, it's all fucking stained up and ruined. I actually have the editions. Great times. Oh, man. Philip K. Dickhead, which I started collecting because one of my bros likes, or he wanted to read Philip K. Dick. So I got him a bunch of books, and I don't think he's ever read one of them. I kind of want them back, but I don't think he's going to give them back. He used to keep them at his desk at work, and I don't think he ever read a single one of them. Joyce Carol Oates, The Collected Hearts, New Tales of the Grotesque. Is your name Mimi or Minnie? That's Mimi, I think. Hard to read in the dark. Do you make videos too, bruv? I make anti-videos. Mimi. Are you making videos, bruv? Then I collect writers I don't even give a shit about. Sedaris, Chuck Palahniuk. I collect books. Just so other people can't get them. "100 Malicious Little Mysteries." I also collect mannequin heads. Klimt art for the ages. Son of Rosemary. Dark Banquet, The Dark Descent, Haunted Homeland. Don't I have that book in the different room? House of the Nightmare. You're gonna bust? All right, bro, go ahead and bust. Let's got a great cover. Bats. The House of the Nightmare and Other Eerie Tales, chosen by Kathleen Lines. My favorite author. Probably this guy. If I can pull out one of his books without turning around. Shouldn't be doing this. That's not him. I can feel it's not him. It's one of his books. No, that's John Muir. Holy shit. Let's see. Oh. This guy's my favorite. Robinson Jeffers. Such counsels you gave to me in other poems by Jeffers. Probably have about 50 or 60 of his books. Fuck, did that book fall to? Oh, it stood up too. That's pretty incredible that it stood up. Look at that, it stood up. It fucking stood up, bruv. The beginning and the end. Such cherry poetry in here. Do you still make wool? When I was young in school in Switzerland, about the time of the Boer War, we used to take it for known that the human race would last the earth out, not dying till the planet died. I wrote a schoolboy poem about the last man walking in stoic dignity along the dead shore of the last sea, alone, 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 remembering all his racial past. But now, I don't think so. They'll die faceless in flocks, and the earth flourish long after mankind is out. Right. This groundling to breathe under the seas. Right. Right. Ode to Hengist and Horsa. Where's the really good one in here? To kill in war is not murder. The beautiful captive. Memoranda. There it is. 12. 12. Possibly the greatest poem in the history of the world. What does this say? Interesting. Right. The Silent Shepherds. What's the best life for a man? Never to have been born. Sings the chorus, and the next best is to die young. I saw the Sibyl at Kumai. I don't know how to say that. Hung in her cage over the public street. What do you want, Sibyl? I want to die. Apothenine, Thelo. You have got your wish, but I meant life, not death. What's the best life for a man? To ride in the wind, to ride horses and herd cattle in solitary places above the ocean on the beautiful mountain and come home hungry in the evening and eat and sleep. He will live in the wild wind and quick rain. He will not ruin his eyes with reading, nor think too much. However, we must have philosophers. I will have shepherds for my philosophers. Tall, dreary men lying on the hills all night, watching the stars. Let their dogs watch the sheep. And I'll have lunatics for my poets, strolling from farm to farm, wild liars, distorting the country news into supernaturalism. For all men to such minds are devils or gods, and that increases man's dignity. man's importance. Necessary lies best told by fools. I will have no lawyer nor constables. Each man guard his own goods. There will be manslaughter, but no more wars. No more mass sacrifice. Nor I'll have no doctors except old women gathering herbs on the mountain. Let each have her sack of opium to ease the death pains. That would be a good world, free and outdoors. But the vast hungry spirit of the time cries to his chosen that there is nothing good except discovery, experiment and experience and discovery. To look truth in the eyes, to strip truth naked. Let our dogs do our living for us, but man discover. It is a fine ambition, but the wrong tools. Science and mathematics run parallel to reality. They symbolize it, they squint at it, they never touch it. Consider what an explosion would rock the bones of men into little white fragments and unsky the world if any mind should for a moment touch truth. That's fucking power. Jeffers in his last day, one-eyed like a cyclops, drinking himself into oblivion. My burial place. What's the one called? Here's the one that, what's his name? Fucking, what's that guy? Ghost Hunter. Zach Bagans read on his show when he went to the Tor House, which is Jeffers' home in Carmel. It was embarrassing having Zach Bagans read anything. Vulture. Salvage. There's a great one. Is this the one where he says, no, that isn't the one. Harder than granite. Patronymic. I like tariffs. The tariffs are good. If you're afraid that your microwave's going to cost extra, don't buy a fucking microwave. I haven't had a microwave or a TV in 5 years. I don't need either one. Yeah. No income tax and then have tariffs on everything. That's how our country is supposed to be. What about cars? What about them? I already bought a new one, so I don't have to worry about it. I mean, you think about it, if there's a 10% tariff on a $500 television, what's that extra $50? If $50 is going to bankrupt you, what else are you buying from overseas, honestly? Well, you got to buy Nikes because you're a communist. Pay $150 for a shoe that costs about $7 to make. It's not an American thing. Every country has tariffs, but the fact that Trump, who is a socialist in himself, but said that we're going to make the tariffs even, because honestly, we don't need anything from China. Yeah, tariffs are good. And the whole point of a tariff is to keep the prices from your competitors higher than yours. And if you're not making the items that you're importing, you're a debtor nation, which we are. And that's why we owe $40 trillion because we're morons. What time is it? 1 o'clock. Yeah, I'm all for tariffs. There's nothing you need from overseas, honestly. Maybe a Cadbury egg, and what's that going to cost you? 10 cents more? I mean, if you're fucking buying a $1,500 phone, you're a moron to begin with. Let's be honest. What do you need from overseas? Nothing. What book is this? This is The Beginning and the End by Robinson Jeffers. A champ. A champ to the end. Where's that poem? Trying to find it, and I don't see it. Maybe I should look at the beginning. I thought it was in the beginning, though. The Great Wound. No, it's just all these people that they don't want tariffs. Well, you know what? I don't want income tax either. I never agreed to an income tax. It's illegal. It's indentured servitude. Anti-income tax. Where is this poem I'm looking for? I don't see it. Silent Shepherds was one of them. Maybe it's not in here. I know it's in here, though. The monstrous drought. He is all. Cremation, patronymic. See the human figure. My burial place. Hand. What is it called? Believe History. That's a pretty good one, too. 39. I Believe History. I think we are the apes' children, but believe history. We are the devils. The fire deaths, the flaying alive, the blinding with hot iron, the crucifixions, the castrations, the famous murder of a king of England by hot iron forced through the anus, to burn the bowels, and men outside the 10-foot dungeon wall could hear him howling. Through such violence, such horrors, we have come and survived time. It came from the devil and will go back and will go to the devil, the old Normans said. But those were the violences of youth. We are not returned to that point. These are the grim and weeping horrors of old age. Storm Dances of Gold. Autobiographical. Night Piece. My Burial Place. Fierce Music. If you keep command of yourself, you can bear almost anything. But man must rest, a man must sleep, that is, abandon control. Then all the sick demons take him in charge. Whoever heard of a pleasant dream? Fear and remorse are monstrously exaggerated. And fear of responsibility, that is what drags us out of our beds, into the bitter black night to walk the floor and shudder and regain control. Else we should lie and scream. I seem to hear in the nights many estimable people screaming like babies. I bite my lips and feel my way to the window. Where the moon rakes through cloud, the wind pants like a dog, and the ocean tears at his shore gray claws of a great cat, slitting the granite. The elements, thank God, are well enough. It is only man must be always wakeful, steering through hell. Hell. Vulture. I had walked since dawn and lay down to rest on a bare hillside. Above the ocean I saw through half-shut eyelids a vulture wheeling high up in heaven, and presently it passed again, but lower and nearer, its orbit narrowing. I understood then that I was under inspection. I lay death still and heard the flight feathers whistle above me and make their circle and come nearer. I could see the naked red head between the great wings, bare downward staring. I said, "My dear bird, we are wasting time. These old bones will still work. They are not for you." But how beautiful he looked, gliding down on those great sails. How beautiful he looked, veering away in the sea light over the precipice. I tell you solemnly that I was sorry to have disappointed him. To be eaten by that beak and become part of him, to share those wings and those eyes, what a sublime end of one's body. What an enskyment. What a life after death. Jackass. All right, buddy. Where's the one I want to read? Believe history. The dog in the sky. I don't think it's in this book. Oh my god. To kill in war is not murder. Do you still make war? Star swirls. Oh, thanks. It's not in here. It can't be. A great wound. Why can I find this fucking poem? I gotta give up.